Hi everybody and welcome to the HICAMO podcast hosted by myself, William, and co-host Hannah. The aim of the show is to help you discover career options by sharing career insights from people working across a range of industries. Today's show is going to be an interesting one. We're sitting down with the Director of Finance of an NHS hospital to gain insight into the key role that finance professionals play within the healthcare sector. After completing an undergraduate degree in chemistry, he began his career on the NHS graduate scheme. He is now a chartered accountant with a master's in healthcare leadership and has a breadth of experience working in senior finance roles across a number of organisations. Please join us in welcoming Terry Whittle. Hi Terry, thanks for coming on the show. How's it going?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Billy, for having me on. I had a pretty busy day today, but I've been looking forward to this. It's the end of the working day for me now, so it's good to have some time with you guys this evening to get onto some conversation.
Excellent, great. We'll jump straight in. We normally like to start with a game of two truths and a lie. And then Hannah will jump in with some questions. So we'll hand over to you to give us two truths and a lie.
Yeah, sure. So this is always going to be the bit I think that catches me out of these conversations. So two truths and a lie. I was an assistant pastry chef in a former life. I have beaten Seb Coe in a race. Bit of an Olympic theme there. There's lots going on, isn't there, for Great Britain medal. And in my rebellious earlier years, I had an eyebrow piercing.
Ooh.
Okay, I felt the last one is definitely correct. I feel like you did.
Depends what the race was. It depends what the race was, doesn't it?
Can you elaborate on that?
No, not really. Only
Fair
that it was in and around the time of the London Olympics in 2012.
Ooh. And then pastry chef, what sort of pastries were you making?
Pies, cakes. It was during a time when I was at university, and it was a job I did then.
Ooh. Hannah, I'm going to let you go with this one.
Okay, I'm going to go with the pastry chef and the eyebrow piercing to be the two truths.
I'm going to go.
Some deep thinking going on here.
Yeah, because I reckon you might have beat Seb Coe in a race, but it depends what the race was. I like the way you've gone with the Olympic theme.
What a backhanded compliment as well. It completely depends on what the race was. Forgetting the fact that he's probably 30 plus years older than me, there's still no prospect of me beating him over the line.
I'm going to go pastry chef. I think the lie. Yeah, I'm going to go with the race. I'm going to say the race is the lie. Because I reckon you might have had an eyebrow piercing.
That's correct. I'm going to give Hannah the credit because she went first.
Yes.
Yeah. Can I tell my Seb Coe story? Because that was quite an embarrassing one.
Yeah, please.
So basically, when London Games was going on, I worked in the same building as the London Organising Committee, LOCOG, and he was always in and out of the building. And word got around my floor that he was always in and out of the building. And I've always followed the Olympics, and Seb Coe's been obviously a bit of an icon. And at the time, he was obviously on the news quite a lot, wasn't he? Because he was the face of the games. So I came out of the tube and saw the back of Seb Coe's head and thought, there's Seb Coe. And started walking a bit faster, hence the race. Now, I knew which building he was going into. I won't say which one it is in case he still works and people start stalking him, but I knew which building he was going into. So I thought, great, that's all I've got to aim for. And then I can have a conversation with him when we get in the lift. So I was going really, really fast to try and catch up with him. And the one thing I'd forgotten to take any notice of was that a building that we were walking past into the main entrance of where we were both going was a big shop. It was a House of Fraser, and it had reflective glass, so he could see me not so discreetly. Basically trying to sprint and catch up in the reflection of the glass. And then when we both went through the turnstiles of the building, got in there, he slightly nervously looked round at me in the lift, thinking, "What does this guy want?" And I just said, "Morning, Seb."
Oh my word! That must have been embarrassing.
Yeah, it was obviously because I could see that he'd noticed me, but I just thought, hey, it's never going to happen again.
You almost got him, almost.
Yeah, no, I should have just stuck toes the line in the fence line. I did count that as a win, but I don't think he thought he was in a race.
Good stuff. Great story. And thank you for sharing. So Hannah, over to you to get into the questions.
Great, let's get into it. So we just wanted to ask you a bit about, you could tell us who you are and what you do and where and how you've got to how you are today, basically.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Terry Whittle. I'm a finance director of an NHS hospital in England. So that's what I do. In terms of my career journey today, I obviously went through school like everyone in England. Took my A-levels, and from there went on to university. I studied chemistry at university, and when I was coming towards the end of my degree program, I was thinking, do I want to stay on and do a master's or a PhD, or through the career fairs that were going on at the university at the time, I thought, I wanted to do basically a mix of studying, but ideally some application of that study, hence the kind of lab work that I was doing in chemistry sort of appealed to me at the time, and I like problem solving. And I went on to the recruitment fair, and the I think at the time, indeed still now, that you get the kind of Times top 100 employers, and there was a theme in my university then, and I thought, I'm going to sign up for a graduate program. So I applied for about 5 or 6, and went through the recruitment and selection stages quickest for the NHS program, and got a place on the finance graduate course there, and it was a combination of sort of structured professional learning and exams through the accounting qualifications, and then sort of workplace-based experience where you rotated around different jobs and different organisations and different geographies and things. And I really liked it. I liked the variety of the job. I liked the challenges that came with it. I think you hear a lot about all different manner of graduate schemes that are there for people to take a look at. The thing for me, the NHS one, was just, you really get thrown in the deep end at the NHS because there's always too many things being asked of it, and so many people in the building to try and progress those. So you really have to come in and roll your sleeves up, and you felt from a very early stage, I certainly felt from a very early stage, that you're involved in the doing and you can see where you were making a difference. There's a real variety of personalities and professional groups here, so I've always found it quite a stimulating environment. I finished that graduate program, took a full-time job afterwards with an organisation that I was working in, my final placement at the time, but they conveniently, so there's always a bit of luck in your career path, and I had some quite early on when somebody left the job and it was one that I was interested in. I applied for that, interviewed for it and got offered it, and then went from there really, and I've just worked in a number of hospitals or spent some time in a government department and done some regulation from that, and then started the job that I'm in currently today at the end of February. So it's been quite an interesting start, coming in and leading a team here with lots of people working remotely, and obviously quite a lot of disruption for hospital and health services over the last year of the pandemic and things. But in a nutshell, that's me.
Yeah, we will go into more depth of how COVID's impacted your role later on. In terms of you doing a chemistry degree, what led you to then go into an accountancy background?
Yeah, it's a good question actually, and it's quite funny because you see, I think when you go and do your subject selection at sixth form, it's generalising. I suppose I'd always pigeonholed certain topics. I thought, well, if I go and do science, I'll need to become a scientist or work in kind of academia or go into industry for a big pharmaceutical company or something. And equally, if you study things like sports science and creative stuff, you're going to go into those avenues. So I think when I first applied for the subject, that's what I was thinking I was doing. I'd always enjoyed that subject at school. I think my eyes really opened at university, to be honest with you, because you're obviously developing as an adult, and you're finding your place and learning a bit more about yourself and what's important to you and where your interests lie. And the thing that really struck me with chemistry was that, and I think was the essence of why it appealed to me, was the problem solving part of it. So in a very scientific sense, you're given a problem and you're sent away with some test tubes and Bunsen burners and whatnot to caricature it, and you find an answer to a problem. And I think with accounting, I always saw it not as a as an end game, in that I'm, certainly for me, I don't see myself long term. The last job I had before I retire, if it isn't playing centre midfield for Liverpool Football Club, if I'm not too old, then will probably be something outside of finance. But I think for me, understanding the core components of the finance topic, and how you can influence the business agenda and really support an organisation's strategy, is a really interesting place to operate. And if you don't understand it, it becomes a bit of a mystery and a barrier to change and improvement. So I've really enjoyed that. And as I said earlier on, just the variety that it brings across your desk is really rewarding at the same time. So
Absolutely. So you said that you've completed your degree and you also have a master's. For the role that you do now, do you require both of those? And do you have any other qualifications that you had to complete?
So just in terms of the studying and things, so it was because I went onto a graduate program, obviously that was a prerequisite of route of entry. They were obviously designed for graduates. And I think the advantage of taking one of those routes, but certainly that's not the only route, and it's not for everybody, is that there's a big investment from the institutions that you become a graduate employer within. So they're invested in you, quite literally, in terms of the money they spend on your continued professional development. And they brought a structure to your training and your time out of the office, and as I was saying, your rotation through the different disciplines and areas. But you did need to have a degree to get into that particular door. The thing that was a big sell at the time as well on the NHS scheme was that it was described as a kind of fast track into management. And when you're coming out of university, you thought, that sounds like me. I'll wear a suit and I'll be a manager, and, and then everything will be great. And then you see what real life is. But I've got absolutely no regrets about taking that path, and it's been a fantastic journey for me. The general studying side of things, so I've always enjoyed learning. I still enjoy learning today. I don't think for a second that's all behind me, because I've kind of sat the exams that the government says you need to sit to get to certain stages in life, and opportunities and doors opening. The master's, actually, so when I was at university, I did a bachelor's of science. I didn't do a master's in chemistry first off. I've always retained an interest. I think I was quite a grudging leaver of university, because I really enjoyed the environment. It wasn't sort of party season every night or anything like that in terms of those reasons, but you were always sent away to question yourself and reflect and start to understand how you approach problems, and I really enjoyed that stimulation. And I think I said to myself when I left, this won't be the last time I do some studying, because that would have left quite a big hole in terms of things that I take purpose from and value. And I think I'd said to myself, even if you retire, you can come back and do a PhD. I don't know what shape my mind will be in there, given what the age of sort of retirement in this country at the moment. But so when I went into the graduate program, that gave me a professional accounting qualification that you had to study, and there was an edge to that program. So if you had to sit the professional exams and progress at the rate that was determined by the program, because it didn't want to be funding people forever. So I think in my day, it gave you something like 2.5 years of time to pass your professional exams, which meant that you were sitting routinely, I don't know, anywhere between probably 5 and 10 exams a year for that period of time. And there was an edge to it, in the sense of, if you failed a certain number of those exams, or the same one a number of times, you could lose your job. So that certainly kept you focused.
That's an incentive there to complete your exams, pass them.
Yeah, it was. And when we were going through the selection centre on the assessment days, they were describing it as a carrot and a stick. So you had, alumni that were already on the programme, and they said, if this isn't for you, you don't like that type of pressure, then, understand that and make your decisions around it. So I went into it thinking, no problem, and I was quite happy with the study package that was offered, and thought, well, okay, that's just going to keep me very honest during it. So that led me to do my professional qualification, which was good fun, and a completely different topic to chemistry. I have to say, when I first went into my first classroom for the account study, I looked around the room, and I think there was me and one other person that didn't have exam exemptions, because there wasn't anything particularly relevant to the chemistry syllabus. to what I was going to be doing, and everyone else mostly had sat some form of accounting or finance qualification. So the exam hall physically in those days, because showing my age, you didn't sit much online, was quite an empty place for that first year. And then, yeah, from that and my interactions with the NHS Leadership Academy, who are based up in Leeds, they offer lots of kind of undergraduate qualifications, postgraduate courses, and other leadership development initiatives. And I think it was in 2013 for me, so quite a while ago now, having always wanted to do some further study, had the conversation at home in terms of the commitment. It's a big life commitment, timing wise, and does it fit in with your other responsibilities and things. Got the green light at home that that would be fine, and we could kind of accommodate it as a family. And then went and did my Masters in Leadership Development under the NHS programme, but with the University of Birmingham, there's an affiliation there. And yeah, so from a kind of exam point of view, that was the last formal structured piece of academic learning I'd done. And then in my job, I've done courses around coaching and other bits and pieces, which I found, again, just satisfying from an enthusiasm to learn standpoint. So
Amazing. So you did your accounting qualification before you did your masters. So you went back to do your masters after.
Yeah, that's right. Yes,
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, running order, GCSEs for me, A levels, undergrad, professional qualification, and then masters. Yeah.
And what accounting qualification did you complete?
Mine's a sixth one, so it's the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy. The graduate program, I think it still is true today. It offers you a choice of the CIMA, which is the Chartered Institute of Management Accounts, or the one that I just noted there. My kind of motives for choosing CITFA, I suppose, weren't the most noble if I look back, because again, I was recently out of university and still had a fairly active social life and things. And the university that taught the qualification that I was in accounting was closer to home, so it was just less disruption. And the kind of study arrangement, I think, was day release then rather than big blocks of weeks at a time. So it just fitted, frankly, what else I was doing in my life at the time. So I chose that route.
Amazing. So would you advise doing a master's straight out of coming out of university, so straight after the degree, or do you advise going into industry and then doing basically what you did and going back to do a master's?
So I think the answer to that depends entirely on the individual. For me, what I've described, I think, hopefully came across with not just the literal things that I was doing, but some of the motivations and reasons around them. And a big part of making it work and giving yourself the best chance of success is to check the compatibility with other aspects of your life and your interest and what's going on for you. So I think taking a bit of time up front, recognizing the size of the commitment that you're about to make, and that may be a mixture of time and financial commitment, particularly if you're self-funding parts of your study. You just need to start from it in the right place, because there's nothing worse than thinking, there's a kind of society pressure on me to get all of my study out of the way, and I'll collect all these letters and badges, and then I can go into the world and I've got a strong CV to serve me as a springboard into a career. If you start doing it and then you decide to go and get married, or you want to start a family, or you're moving house, or you've got some other big life events going on, you're gonna have some quite difficult times where you're sat, in my experience, where you're sat at home studying on a desk, looking out of your window, and on some days it'll be sunny and others it'll be rainy, and you're thinking, why did I commit to doing this again? And what's the sacrifice I've made? And am I happy? Do I want to sit here and see this through? So doing that thinking up front and working out based on those things what the best path is for you as an individual would be my only tip in that. Talk to people, get their soundings, and reflect on what that means for you. But you need to make your individual decision.
Yeah, you need to think long term before you commit to doing something like a master's. Okay, yeah. Cool. So what key skills are required for your role?
I think one of the main ones, there's a lot of stuff. You can Google any job description pretty much and see what the personal specification is in there and what skills, qualities and experiences they're looking for. I think increasingly some of the personal qualities are starting to be included in those documents, which is refreshing and important. So a big thing for me is being, and I hope I am, calm. It's particularly in the last year or so, you can have quite a turbulent experience given, you're working in an environment, you're trying to lead a corporate agenda and set the strategy and direction for your team. And and working with other members of the corporate body, the board, and that can feel like a lot of weight and responsibility on your shoulders, rightly, because it is. And if you start then having all the kind of things going on within your environment that you're not able to influence, that are beyond your control, whether it's a government mandate decision, a global pandemic coming online, if you worry about everything that goes on, you probably won't enjoy the job. That's not to say you don't take it seriously and wear that responsibility in a serious fashion, but you need to sort of, again, think about how you operate, how you're at your best. So if you're someone that likes creating the conditions of pressure so that you can taste it because you've got tight deadlines, you don't perhaps bring people in and share the load. If you like and you thrive in those conditions, again, you can create that environment and that bubble very easily, and it can just happen to you if you don't do anything about it. If you work in a different way, you need to be self-aware. So that's another kind of quality I think that can help, and just start to go into a job thinking, well, there's going to be a whole load of things being asked of me. It's going to feel quite uncomfortable at times. How do I like to work, and how do I create those conditions and support framework around me, both within your own team, so you've brought the skills, quality, experience, capacity into your team so that you've got the bandwidth to do the doing, and you've created a system around you that can help. But you've also, just as importantly, had those conversations at home to say, look, there are going to be days where I walk in the door and I'm not particularly at my best, and I know that you've got a busy job, and there might be occasions where you also walk in the door on the same night and neither of us are at our best. So let's just, how are we going to think about that today? How do we cut each other a bit of slack? Parental responsibilities, if you've got children, or caring responsibilities, or whatever it is.
The work-life balance.
Yeah, the whole deal. You need to have quite an honest, open conversation. And for me, going to this one, the best time to do that is normally when I'm on holiday, because I'm completely out of the hustle and bustle of the working job. So that was a really important reflection. Beyond that, it helps it if you understand a bit about your own gig. So being qualified as an accountant and understanding the finance discipline, which things are particularly pertinent to the agenda of the day, picking and choosing the bits that you particularly need to be involved in. So if you try and involve yourself in everything, so a bit of prioritization, bit of delegation, you'll drown if you try and take it all on your own shoulders. So I think those things, and not to mention it last because it's less important, but you need to be quite humble, and you need to take time during the working week to just pause, think, reflect, and check in with yourself. Because if you don't do that, you'll lose sight of what you're doing, and you can kind of disappear into certain agendas. So I think bringing it back to the basics and just trying to develop those skills, and that certainly for me personally wasn't something you start out with as a skill set in your career. It's the hard yards of doing difficult jobs and working with different people and getting their counsel and perspective. That gives you a really rich.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think in terms of with that, and you mentioned it around, they're not necessarily skills you'll start out with, and you'll need to develop those over the course of your career. And some of those you'll continue to develop continuously. But in terms of people that are actually starting out in a finance role, or people that are applying for finance roles, entry level at your organization, in your team, what are the sort of skills or key skills and experiences that you tend to look for, or you'd advise people trying to demonstrate when applying for jobs?
Yeah, good question. I think, the main one for me is, and it's a personal quality that comes across, when you first start interacting with people that are looking for their opportunities, is an enthusiasm for your topic. And that's not to suggest that everybody has to bounce out of bed when they're starting their career, just come out of college or sixth form, and they're thinking, right, I know for definite I want a career in finance. I wasn't in that position, so I wouldn't expect everyone else to be. But if you're somebody that knows that you want to do something else, it quite often shows, either in an interview or an initial question, because people go through the motions and you don't get that personal connection. You can't see that they're resonating with their topic. So I think an enthusiasm is a good thing to start off with. And it's often a good indication when you're first getting in front of an employer or prospective employer to show some of that enthusiasm in terms of your own preparation. So if you've taken some time out of your evening or a weekend, and you've either run and got in, up and got in touch with some people in that organisation, or you've done some reading online and you've done a bit of preparation, that goes a long way to showing me that you care about what your topic is and what you're looking to do. I think, there's something, again, if you've got a rough idea of wanting to get an entry-level role in a particular discipline, whether that's a finance career or indeed any other avenue, if you've done, don't wait around. Start early. So if you think that you've got some interest in a particular area, go and read around your topic. Go and see if there's some relevant experience that you can get, some transferable skills. And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to go and have an internship or a placement or anything like that. You can do a whole heap of things in your personal life, whether it's volunteering or supporting a club, or just using your initiative to demonstrate that the work that went into a particular passion or focus of yours is relevant and transferable. And then you make that conversation a lot easier, because you're just showing somebody that there's a willingness and an awareness around the skills and competences that you'll need for a particular job. So I think there's some good things for me, and hunger is the main one. I always say it to my team, it doesn't matter whether I'm today recruiting a deputy to me or somebody that is in the most junior job in the department. I want somebody that is hungry to learn and take some pride in what they do. And it's really easy to lose those those skills in your career journey, because you'll take some knocks, you may get worn down, you may get a bit more cynical about life and other things. You have change in your own life.
Need that resilience.
Yeah, you do. You need to keep that and show it. And I think, as much as the professional qualifications, that's the personal connection I always look for in somebody.
Amazing. So what attracted you to a career in finance within the healthcare sector?
I think just being, as I said, or touched upon earlier on, it's just going into an area of work where you can see very, very tangibly the difference you can make to people's lives. And that's not to say that's unique to the NHS. Clearly, I mean, if you launch, I imagine the person that invented the iPhone and the Nike trainer feel quite good about themselves too, because those are products that have given people a lot of satisfaction and have changed, frankly, the way people go about their lives in a number of cases. So it's not unique to the NHS, but the thing for me about the NHS and everyone, it touches everybody, whether it's when you have a child or you've got members of your family that use it, you can see why it's such an important service socially. And I think for me, coming in and being able to work on that, and there are so many challenges and constraints in working in a free at the point of access, publicly funded service. You can't be everything to everyone. So there's some really, really interesting thinking and unique challenges that come with that type of environment. And when you think that you're able to work on those problems with probably one of the most sort of qualified and expert staff groups, professions of any industry. So doctors are very heavily qualified people, nurses are heavily qualified people. There's all the technicians around pharmacy and pathology. You've got a lot of experts in their own field. So you're pairing up and partnering a lot with other experts and trying to say, how do we bring our collective understanding and collaborate and try and be a bit innovative? It's that for me is the good stimulus for why I like working here.
It's a very rewarding job, yeah. Yeah,
it is. I mean, this is going to sound really quite sort of I suppose a bit cheesy, but I remember in a job I had when I was working in a paediatric hospital in London earlier on in my career, one of the things we were trying to work on was home hemodialysis services for children. That meant that you weren't having to come into hospital 3 times a week, the disruption that causes on your school life, your social life, you couldn't take a holiday. And, industry had developed a product which meant that you had a kind of cabin bag sized dialysis machine that would be literally giving freedom and life back to young children. And we found a way to
learn about that actually in A-level biology. Yeah, it was very interesting to learn about. Yeah,
it's remarkable. And you've given somebody the opportunity to go on holiday and just have some life back. And, if you can find jobs that give you that type of, frankly, buzz, then great, apply for them, because it's a good place to go and work when you're looking at those sorts of problems.
Amazing.
And I think that's a great example of where, you can work in an industry like healthcare and you don't necessarily have to be delivering the care, but you can play a very important role through a support function like finance as an accountant, and you still get that rewarding feeling because you've played a part in that multidisciplinary team that's delivering that service. So I think that's a great point that the viewers or listeners are able to take in, because I know there's a lot of people that are probably looking at working in certain industries but are not sure how their skills directly fit that industry. But sometimes it's not about just looking at the forefront of that industry. Think about kind of the whole ecosystem within that industry and how you could play your part based on your skills. I think that's a really good point, Terry.
Yeah, no, completely. And I always say to folks who come into the team, because I think there's a bit of a view that says, finance, procurement, workforce, you're a kind of corporate back office function, and to me, that's an unhelpful tag. You're an enabling function. You facilitate change. You can take barriers and blockages out of the road and make things easier. And a really good thing that I always encourage new entrants into this organisation to do is, if you're a business partner or if you're working corporately across a brief, go and follow people that do the job on the front line. Go and shadow people, and your insight into what they're doing and how they're doing it will be very different to their own lived experience, because they're in that bubble, and then you can start to see how you make change and how you can help people out. So yeah, I think.
Fantastic. That's amazing. And off the back of that, obviously having always worked in the healthcare background and working for the NHS, have you ever at any point in your career, have you ever considered working in the private sector or the corporate side of accountancy?
Yeah, I think, I think it would be a bit awkward for me to say no, because obviously I jumped out of chemistry when I was studying it and went into a completely different topic in that sense. And I think, so the career I've had so far in health has been really rewarding and varied from my own point of view, and it's taken me into different places. I've met lots of different people, and there's been lots of change. So that's definitely a theme for me in terms of my working environment. So I'm like somebody, I take a lot of, get a lot of energy from having a look at different problems and going to different places. And so far that's been brilliant. And I think definitely before I retire, I will want to go and try a different industry or a different organisation to get that, again, insight and learning. That's the big thing that I like, seeing new things, trying to play around with particular problems, see how you can apply something. So yeah, at some point I'm sure I'll reflect and think about it. I certainly would never close the door. And at the same time, as I say, I've been really satisfied and enjoyed the career I've had so far. And until that changes, there's nothing immediately pressing to go and turn my head in a different direction. But no, I think follow your interests and whatever it is that motivates you.
Amazing. And you touched on this a little bit before, but when you were applying to graduate schemes, what do you think now for people that are applying for finance graduate schemes, what do you think they can do to differentiate themselves?
What I would say is you will know better than most people how you can make your individual strengths and traits stand out. So what I probably wouldn't be in favour of doing is saying, well, if you pick up a piece of paper that says, here's everything we look for as a finance graduate, so somebody that's got analytical talent, somebody that's structured, some of those things, most of those things are taken as a given. So if that's not your particular skill set, then you may not, enjoy that as a work avenue. But if you assume that those are the boxes that you will need to tick as part of your qualification, and you've studied, the relevant courses that get you kind of into a position where that door opens, that's the important time to say, what will I be bringing as an individual? What will Hannah, what will Billy be bringing to that particular professional area? And let your character come across into your job if you're comfortable to do that. So you may say, well, I'm a particularly energetic person, I like helping others. And if you can get involved in some initiatives, some schemes, some things that you're doing in your own life, in your own time, that give you some examples that you can say, hey, look, I'm proactive, I'm self-starting, this is what I've done, and this is why I've done it, then all of a sudden that really resonates in who you are. And rather than just having that written down on a CV, you're telling me literally what you've been out and done, and I don't need to read it on a CV. It just comes across to you, and I think, right, okay, that person does stand out. I can see now how they're going to really influence this field. And that's not to say that if you do all those things, everybody you sit opposite and inquire about, an academic qualification or an employment opportunity will then say, oh yeah, definitely, you need to come in here. But it will give somebody a really good insight into who you are and whether you're a good fit for that particular team or organisation. And the answer won't, if the answer is always yes to that, then you're quite a unique individual. But for the most part, it's about you finding out, from the organisation and them seeing a bit about who you are as a person. So that would probably be my top tip.
Could you give us a bit of insight into what the application process and the assessment centres are like? I'm assuming they're still broadly the same. But yeah, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, of course. It's actually, they're eerily familiar. So the job that I had to first get into, the graduate scheme itself, had quite a few similarities with the interview process I had as part of my first job as a finance director that I was doing last autumn. From a graduate point of view, so there was an initial round of an application form. So that's quite a traditional format. So that was an online form that you submitted that talks a little bit about your academic qualifications, your skills, your interests and competencies. And then there was an initial filtering. I imagine, I can't remember what the numbers are now, at least in the graduate program I went through, but you get tens of thousands of people that apply for these, and they may only be offering, 800 places or something. So it's quite oversubscribed and competitive, but they start to filter down, what individuals they're looking for from that initial phase. And then the second stage was, from memory, a round of online, you had some psychometric tests, you had some scenario-based questioning, what would you do in this particular instance, that particular instance. And I think there was a numerical reasoning test as well, which is probably fair game considering it was an accounting course that you're applying for. And then that was a round. And then from there, you were invited onto a regional assessment centre, which was a whole day thing. And the purpose of that day, as far as I could remember it, certainly at the time, and then kind of leaving the building on the way out, was that they were just trying to take you out of your comfort zone. So you would turn up, you'd be given group work with completely new people, and you're sat in a room knowing that everyone's after the same opportunity, and there might be 30 in a room, and there's 10 going to be selected from that entrant group or something, whatever the number is. You have observation people around the room looking at how you interact, the body language, your kind of mood, and not just the point at which you give an answer to a direct question you're asked with, but how you support others and bring them into discussion and debate. We had an in-tray exercise, which, again, the sole purpose of that was just to overload you with information to see whether you could pick the important pieces of it. And then lots of interviews and difficult customer type situations. So there's a whole raft of different scenarios that they were testing. And as I say, funnily enough, when I was getting interviewed last autumn, there was a lot of that repeated as part of the director job. Plus, you had the extra layer of meeting the non-executive group and obviously a lot of people that were working already in the organisation that you were going to come and work with or indeed lead. So it was quite familiar.
Obviously, working in the healthcare, in a healthcare background and for the NHS, how has COVID impacted your job, basically?
It's been, really challenging and pretty exhilarating along the way. So, first and foremost, you kind of forget in some ways about your professional hat, and you say, what's the needs of the organisation? What's being asked of and expected from the hospital in the moment? And it was very obvious when the COVID pandemic struck that it was new and nobody really understood, because there wasn't much precedent for that type of an event, what was going to be required of us. So again, the point I drew upon earlier, where you've got lots of professionals in the building, each with a different understanding, there was a real need to mobilise people and say, you may have an expertise in microbiology and infection prevention and control. You might be a respiratory consultant and really understand, because obviously at that point in time, COVID was taking us into that particular area, and similarly with intensivists and intensive care clinical teams. So there was a lot of reflecting going on and working out what was needed in what order of priority, and what we were needing to do as a finance profession to try and support the organisation. And some of that meant people just left their day jobs and were going around delivering and running clinical stock to ward areas to make sure the doctors and nurses and support teams could focus their time on the tasks that were mission critical and could only be done by them, and just trying to keep the hospital moving forward. As some of the initial period of uncertainty started to settle down, there was lots of conversations going on around how we needed to bolster the capacity, the space, the amount of people we could get into the building and treat at any one time. So clearly from the pandemic, there was a big focus around oxygen therapy, whether that is in interventional therapy where you've got, you're intubated on IT, or if you're just wearing a mask for faster supply of oxygen on a medical ward. So there was lots of trying to buy, the medical kit in for that, open up extra bed spaces because the numbers were just ranking up. The
PPE crisis, I remember.
Yeah, no, definitely. It felt exponential at the beginning, the rate at which it was growing and the number of hospitalized inpatient cases were rising. It was quite scary. So, you had to be human in the whole thing. Again, try and keep some focus around what was the best use of your time that might not have been working at the top of your technical license. You just needed to get hands on deck. I mean, I spent quite a few days working in a vaccine hub when that was first being set up, and it was brilliant because I was just sat in a desk taking people's details that are coming in for the jab and inputting them into the system. And now, from a technical point of view, that's probably been a few years since I've done something like that, and indeed it was quite refreshing to go back and have a go and remind myself about what's good and bad about those things. But it needed doing, so you get out there and you show your support for the organisation. And I would never, ever, ever underestimate the amount of support you have to put into the organisation for those that are making the biggest sacrifice. So, folks that were working on the front line that were putting themselves at danger, indirectly their family members at danger because they're coming in and out of the building and going into riskier environments. See, there's a big role for you to show how you can try and support those colleagues, whether it's through, setting up wellbeing, welfare offers, time out, and some basic things like that. Just finishing on a bit of a technical point, the kind of finance regime that underpins the business of the NHS and how it all functions, that was all completely suspended during COVID.
Oh, wow.
A heavily centralised, way of working that was effectively administered and overseen by some of the national bodies in the NHS, just to ensure that there was fast flow of cash so that we had enough money to pay people and suppliers. So yeah, massive amount of work that went on, and it's probably going to take a lot of reflecting because we're still in a different phase of it, obviously, but it's been pretty exhilarating to try and live through it and keep up with the demands of the day.
Oh, just on behalf of the British public, thank you very much for your work.
I take absolutely no credit
as
for
a
that,
key
but
worker, thank you.
I would accept it on behalf of the wider organisation. Yeah, definitely.
So I think we're gonna lead to wrapping up now. Thank you for that, really insightful. Now we're gonna lead on to 3 sentences that I'll start and you'll need to complete. No pressure.
Yeah.
So the first one is success to me means.
Success to me means being happy, challenged, and satisfied in the things that I spend my time on.
Cool, great answer. We're getting quite a common theme with that in terms of happiness. It's good to hear this. We'll be able to do like a blend of all of the answers, hopefully. So that's good. Next one is I wish I had known.
Oh, they're always difficult ones. I wish I'd known the pandemic was coming. I think that would have been helpful. I think it's a very silly but practical answer. I think for me, there's something about knowing what's coming down the track for you in your personal and professional life that would just be a nice advantage in life, I think, to have. But it's probably not the way I approach life. I think living the here and now and not sort of thinking about what might have been or what I might have known is probably not how I operate as default. But if I had a crystal ball, definitely that'd be useful.
Cool. I'm not sure if they've started selling those on Amazon yet, but soon. Okay, great. And then the final one is the best advice I could give.
Can I slightly tweak that? So, because I now give it as my own, but the best advice I've ever received in terms of just relevant to the topic of today and careers and things is nobody looks after you and your career more than yourself. And it was a wise old owl that gave me that advice, and it's really true. And I think that I always share on with other people that I meet, whether they're new or quite a way into their career. I think it stands you in quite good stead, and it chimes nicely with the points I was making about taking time for yourself to work out what's important for you, and give it the respect it's due in terms of what you want from your career and your life. So yeah, knows he looks after your career more than you.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'm going to chuck one more quick question in there, just because you touched on the theme of the Olympics. If you could compete in any sport in the Olympics, which one would it be and why?
That's a brilliant question. Well, I mean, the 100 meters is obviously the glamour event, isn't it? But I think after watching the last week, and particularly Tom Daley's efforts on the synchronized diving, I mean, that's quite an impressive event.
Yeah, they make it look so easy, but
ridiculously hard. So I'd love to.
And the impact of the water when they're hitting it is just insane.
Yeah.
All you see with me going in is a stretcher coming out at that point. But yeah, no, I think if you
go in, you won't come back out.
Yeah, he's such a humble guy as well. So yeah, if I could be more Tom Daley and do the synchronized diving, I think that'd be really good fun. Cool. What's your answer to that question? What would you do?
That we ask the questions on this show.
If you're 100 meters guy.
To be fair, I think I'd probably go for something like the 100 meters sprint, but I can't see that ever happening. I'll probably do better at the long distance, but 100 meters sprint, I think. What about you, Hannah?
I'd probably do relay. Have a team effort.
Oh, good answer. Good answer.
You could do the cycling. There's lots of good cycling events. The team pursuit, that was pretty interesting as well. You learn a lot about the Olympics, don't you? All the different disciplines. I think it's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, someone said to me today that they've included skateboarding, I think, for the first time, and apparently they're doing huge jumps. They've not got any padding, no elbow pads, knee pads. Apparently, it's pretty scary stuff when you see how high they're going. But
I was quite in awe of the BMX as well as an event, because I'd seen the layout of the course and thought people would be doing sort of half pipe flips and all sorts of tricks, but it just seemed to be an absolute outright sprint on a very, very bumpy course. So again, that looked like good fun, but I'd probably break a collarbone or something along the way.
Yeah.
Leave the experts to it.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Terry, for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure to have you. I'll just hand over to Hannah to see us out.
So thank you very much for joining us, Terry. I'd just like to say to everyone, thank you for listening and watching. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like, comment and subscribe to the HICAMO channel. And remember, tell a friend to tell a friend. And until next time, bye-bye.